G'day everyone, welcome back to our channel, Butlers Customs and Classics. So today, in this episode, I'm going to talk you through some accessory fitment on the MT-03 Yamaha. This bike was just delivered this morning and the owner has decided that she wants to replace the indicators, put crash bar protectors on, which I've thrown on already, a new radiator cover, and black out some parts with powder coat. So I'm going to run you through it from start to finish in as much detail as I can on how I do this, in case you've got one at home and you want to be able to do it yourself. So I want to say also a big thank you to all our new subscribers. We appreciate it so much. Without you, we couldn't do this. And also, if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on your notifications. So let's do this. So we're going to start off by taking off this pillion seat, but I'll show you the reason we're taking this off is to get to the indicators. So the wiring for the indicators comes up underneath the seat here and goes in up through underneath the pillion seat. So we'll get this pillion seat off. You've got a key on the side, left-hand side, or the near side, nearest to the curb. So you turn that key and this back end lifts up and then you pull the pillion seat back. And then underneath the pillion seat, they've got like a little cover, plastic cover, and that just pushes forward and pulls out from underneath the frame. It comes out, and then you've got all your wiring and plugs and a starter relay, etc., hidden down here for the indicators. Then that's basically that wiring for the right-hand indicator is disconnected. And then we do the same for the left, so we'll disconnect the earth. And the brown is the power, the left-hand indicator or near side. And then that will come out from underneath as well. Pull that down through there. Now they're both disconnected. Take the key out and we'll put the key in the ignition. We'll turn the ignition on. The indicators are flashing. Then we'll grab a test light. If you don't have yourself a test light, grab one. They're $10, $15 from any auto parts store or tool shop. These things will save your life. So this needs to be connected to the body of the bike, so the structural part of the bike on any bolts. And then what we'll do, we'll put the test light into one of the wires just to confirm that we have power on one of those. So I'm just going to get down in there. We may not have a good earth. We'll just move this around. We might even connect this down onto the motor, onto one of the bolts, like so. And now we've got a better earth. So now we've got power on that one. So we know that we definitely, our green and browns were our positives. And then we can swap this over now and put it into the other one. And we can switch the indicators on, change the indicator to the right, and we've got power there. So we definitely, the two blacks that went together were our earths and the other two are our power. So we know that now. We turn the ignition off so we don't flatten the battery, like so. And we'll start to remove the indicators. The indicator is actually held on just by a rubber grommet, which is basically a little rubber ring, which mounts into the cutout of the metal bracket. So what you need to do is get underneath with a flat blade screwdriver, and you need to pop that out of the rubber grommet. And then that rubber grommet then squeezes shut and the indicator pops out just like that. And then we pull our wires through like so. And then that will come back out and the indicator is out. So that is exactly the same on both sides. So repeat that step on the right-hand side or the left-hand side, whichever you started with. Indicators are off. And then we'll grab the new indicators and we'll get them fitted. So the owner has supplied genuine Yamaha indicators. So these are all specifically made for this bike. They come with instructions, all the parts are here, all the little tiny tabs that go on and resistors, etc. So in the kit, you have your resistors. And the reason for these is these are now LED. So if you don't have the resistors, the lights will basically either just stay on or they'll flash at the wrong time. The resistors gives resistance and enough power, as an LED is a lower voltage compared to your normal light. So basically they come with the resistors that you need, one per indicator. They also come with a little tab which replaces your stock one. So it's very similar shape because of the hole in the bike actually needs to fit this in here so your indicator doesn't pull through the hole. It comes with the nut for the back, and then it also gives you crimp terminal. So you can crimp these on, and this will go over the top in the opposite direction, but it will go over like that to protect it. We'll get to that in a second. So let's get these things fit up. So indicator, this one here, this little plate will go on like so, slides on like that, and we'll go through the hole. Then the other one goes on the back side and presses against it, and then your nut goes on like so. So let's get this fitted up. Come down here. So the shape of this actually fits into that little groove like so, and you have two of them. All right, they're both the same shape. So we'll do what I said, and we'll slide this back through here like that. And we'll put our wires through the hole. Get that in the right position. And we get our back one on. And I like to put that one on that way instead of that way, so it actually hugs the other one and like a sandwich. So we'll put that on through there, just like that. And then the nut goes on the back, and it's going to move around a little bit until we get that nut secure. So we'll get this nut on. And then we line it up, and we want to get these indicators in the right position, so that actually needs to be dead lined up over the hole for it to be in the right spot. And then we grab our spanner and we'll tighten up the bolts underneath with a 12mm. Just make sure that when you almost get it nipped up tight, you line up this spacer so the plastic doesn't move. Alright, so that's done up now, and I'm just going to leave them a little bit loose, and I'll adjust them at the very end once I get the wires run through. So these wires now will go back in the direction we took them before. So underneath there's a little tiny piece of what looks like material, and the wires will stuff through there. Just got to carefully get them through like so, and then we'll push them back up through the hole they came out of, and you'll see they'll come back up through the bottom here. Then now you want to make sure that these little rubber boots go over so you don't have any of the terminal showing, otherwise it can short out. Then you get your resistor. So black to black, push that in there. Make sure your little rubber boots over properly, and make sure you've pushed it in properly until it clicks, so it's definitely secure, because these things can come loose. So you can hear that little click. Now the resistor will plug straight in to those wires. All our wires are plugged in. They've wires running from here up through the bottom, yellow to yellow, black into black for earth. Our yellows from our resistor were power, as we said. So from factory, if you come in and look in here, what you will see, all these wires are actually just floating around from factory. Nothing's actually secure. But what I will definitely do, get these from Bunnings, they've got a little sticky back on the bottom of them, just a bit of double-sided tape, and I'll stick that up underneath here, like so, and then they just lift up, and you can tuck your wires in underneath and clamp them down. I might pop that off, make it easier for me to get to. So these will go on like so, and that just gives them something to support the wires so they don't flop around like that. And your resistors, try and keep your resistors as close to the metal as possible, because they can get a bit warm. Not warm enough to obviously melt anything, but they do get warm, so I like to keep them away from the as much as possible. Now we've got all that clip back in and all the wires in and tucked in nicely, everything's secure. We just got to do a test before obviously we put the seat back on to make sure the indicators actually work properly. So ignition on, left hand indicator, right hand indicator, done. Everything's secure, nothing's loose, everything's been double checked. And then we will reverse the process of putting the seat back on. So plastic will go back in, push in like so, bang, it literally just sits there. And then on the bottom of the seat, you've got your two hooks, which will hook back into the frame, tucks in like so, and then it'll clip back down, job done. So the next step is to replace the front indicators, which are a little bit more complex than the back. You need to take off a few more things to get to the wires. So we'll start off with this Allen key at the top, and we also have one underneath. This is a 4.5mm Allen key that we need to undo. Once it's sort of cracked, you should be able to do it by hand. So that's actually loose now and undone, and it will come out once I undo the bottom. So now you need to swap over Allen keys and use a 4mm on the bottom. And I've just cracked that and loosened that off just to make this a bit quicker. So I can do that by hand. So both of those are out now, and this top one will now pop out. Just pop that out of there. So the long one goes in the top, and the shorter one, 4mm, 4.5mm Allen key, like so. Now we need to undo these two front ones. Pop those two out. And this cover then just unclips, and it has rubber on the back. So there's two holes there that line up and hold the rubber into place for when it slots back in. So that goes like that. And the next step is to undo an 8mm hex head bolt here. So I like to use these T-bars, it's specific for motorbikes, so we'll undo that. Like so, and then that speedometer will then lift out, and we have a little dust rubber here. So this is literally to catch any dust that gets in here to stop it going on the wiring. So that will just pull out from underneath there and allow us access to our wires from our indicator. So they run from the back of the indicator along and plug in here. They've got a little tiny zip tie in here which needs to be cut to allow us to pull that out of there. So we'll cut that, pull these wires out, and then we'll do the next step. So when you're actually removing this outer cover, there is a clip just here, and that clip needs to be sort of pushed in and given a little jiggle just so you can get that clip there, which you can see goes in through this bracket and holds that on. If you just pull it too hard, you'll potentially break the plastic the clip's attached to. So we've done that. And then next step, just to make sure that we know which is our positive and our negative. The back was a negative black and the positive was the green, but sometimes they change things up. So just to confirm, we'll put our earth on, test light in, indicators on, and we're just making sure that the green is the positive. So we know we don't cross them over at any stage and accidentally blow a fuse. So we'll disconnect these two wires now. So try to grab on to the terminal itself, because if you actually pull on the wire itself, you'll potentially break the wire off the back of the terminal, and it's really easy to do. They're only a 2.5 to 3mm wire. So pull them off there. So they're disconnected. So now that will come out, and it's the same setup as the back. So you have a little rubber holding on the plastic. So I can actually use this test light just to lever this out of here like that. So we pull that off there. In this one, you actually have a Phillips head screw down inside here. So you'll undo that screw, and then that will allow that to come completely out. So we're going to undo this screw now. And as we undo that Phillips head screw, you'll see it comes apart. So the screw actually goes into the back of the indicator, and that screw will just fall out like that. And then your indicator pull through that hole there. There is a rubber grommet on there actually, just the same as the front. So if we lever that little grommet out of there, it's a bit hard, but I'll try and use a screwdriver just to push it down if I can. It just loosens everything up. So now that's come out of there easily. We're all good. indicators out, and now we will replace it with a new one. So once this little fairing's off and you've taken off your indicator, you've got this spacer. So it's the same design as the back. So you've got these two little rubber sections here, and there's a cut in the grommet to allow it to squeeze together. So you squeeze that, and then that will actually come out of the fairing, like that. And then we get our little spacers, as per the back indicators, to drop in there. These can be a little bit fiddly to get through, so you may have to do one at a time to get that through, like so. So we'll feed that wire through. Then we get our back one, which is basically just acting like a flat washer, and we'll feed that on the opposite way. So once we get this put into place like a washer, spin that, sit that on there like so, and then we'll put our nut on, get that on. And again, this can be a bit difficult to get these rubber terminals through the nut because they're a bit bulky. So one at a time is probably your best option. So get that on. And basically you line everything up to where it should go. And there you have it, the indicator's on, just like that. And then we'll assemble it all, and you do the same on the left-hand side. This side cover's now clipped back on. I've got to put the screws in, but we have a lot of extra wire here that they supply, Yamaha supplies you with for some strange reason. So that'll all have to get folded back in on itself. You can't just stuff it in there. And we'll cable tie that in. But firstly, common problems with these little terminals that you get, this is a 4mm terminal and that's a 5mm hole. So when it goes in, you think that it's actually in there properly because of the rubber, but see, it doesn't stay in there properly. It doesn't actually grab on. So what I will do is I get my crimpers and I just squeeze that closed up just a little bit, just to create a bit more tension and pressure on the terminal. And then that will allow us to get that in there. And if it doesn't clip in first try, we can give it another go, but we got lucky, so that's in there, but still a little bit of movement. So just to be safe, we'll give that another squeeze. And try and keep the terminal round, try not to flatten it out too much. Then try again. Right, so now it's clipped in. It's not going anywhere. Just to make sure that that's not going to fall out once you're putting things together, because a bit of movement sometimes can make them pop loose. So we've got all this spare wiring here. So get a couple of small cable ties or zip ties, whatever you like to call them, and we'll fold this wiring back on itself, like so. This resistor is reasonably big, so there's a bit of room down in here behind the headlight that resistor can just sit in like that. And it's not going to go anywhere. And then we can get these wires and fold them back onto themselves. And before I put the resistor in, I'll cable tie that up nice and neat. You can also use electrical tape if you want to. So we'll zip tie this back together. And just make sure that everything's tucked in nice and it's not knotted up like that. And zip tie that in there. Cut off that excess of the zip tie, like so, and then we'll get that resistor down, tucked in there where we need it, like that. Get these wires out of the road, and then that will basically just tuck down in there, and that's all going to be held in by that rubber that we had here, the dust cover, so that will go back down over that bit there, and then this just tucks in. So everything's nice and hidden, you won't see any of that. And that's it, so just repeat the same steps as you did. So you put these two bolts back in, screw this all back in, so your speedometer will go on here over the top, bolt through here. So once you get everything back together and this is all clipped back on, don't put the bolts back in just yet, don't get too carried away. First thing you want to do is make sure that the indicator actually works, because if you haven't got those connectors joined properly and you put all this back together and everything's tight and then it doesn't work, then you've got to redo it again. So just test this before you go and put all your bolts back in. To do the left-hand indicator, it's exactly the same process as the right-hand side. Undo all your bolts, disconnect any cable ties, etc. Swap it over, and then test it, put it all back together, job done. Alright, our next job is to take off the gear shifter and the bracketry, the foot peg, so we can have it powder coated black. So first thing I want to do is I want to take a measurement with the bike on its stand of where this gear shifter is located. So it's sitting at about 200 and there's a bit of play there, so you could technically say 205 mil off the ground. So I would write that down so I know that when I put this back on, it's just going to save me any adjustment and I'll just get it on perfect the first time. So the next step is to undo the Allen keys here. And this plate here is literally just a cover to stop your heel hitting the chain behind it. So I'll show you that once I get this off. So that's off now. So that literally is there to protect your heel from coming around and hitting the chain. So we take that off, and then we want to undo this Allen key here. So you can see here, this bolt actually has Loctite on it. It'd only be a medium strength Loctite or potentially a low strength Loctite, but you want to put some Loctite back on there when it goes back together. Any bolts that have Loctite, always put Loctite back on when it goes back together. So that bolt can stay in there. It's held in pretty good by the washer, so that can just stay as is. Now the next step, we want to undo these two Allen keys which I've loosened off. And then we need to take off the split pin. So we'll bend these back, we'll pull that split pin out and we'll knock that pin through this way. So we'll go over to the bench now, put it in the vise and we'll undo that. So we'll pop this in the vise, tighten that up. We want to bend those pins of the split pin back like I mentioned before. And this pin tends to want to rotate. So what I might do to stop this rotating, there's a bit of play down here, so I'll hold it by that pin so it doesn't spin, and that'll just allow me to get a better bend on these. Clamp that together as best as we can, and then that will pull out of there. Sometimes you can cut them off or you can leave them. It depends on how old they are and how well you get them to close up and pull through the hole. And we got that one out, all right. So that's out of there. And then that pin that we just talked about will slide out of there. Always take photos or video when you're pulling things like this apart, because these pins and springs can be a little bit different to get back together sometimes. So what I like to do is do a little video of myself talking about how I pull things apart if I hadn't done it before. So we want to also see what's the top and bottom. So obviously when you're looking at this spring, it's latched over the bottom from the ground kind of thing, like that. So we'll now get this pin out of here, like so. Spring's falling out, but it will go back together. So the spring went inside and then it sat. You can see a mark on here, which is a good indicator. But since this is going to be powder coated, that mark will probably go away. So that spring sat on there like so. So that's all apart now. We can get all this powder coated and then we can put it all back together once it's powder coated. And we'll always put a new split pin back in. Never reuse the same split pin because they obviously get weakened when they're bent. But that's it. So it's as simple as that. And then again, go back through the process to put it all back together. And again, watch yourself a video. It always makes it easier when you're putting things back together. That's done, ready for the powder coaters. So I hope all that information helped. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. It can be a bit daunting sometimes doing these jobs, but if you just take your time and you write yourself some notes, take some photos or video it, whatever, it'll definitely make life a little bit easier. So again, thank you for watching our videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care.